Dr. Hampton, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me. You come very highly recommended by one of my dearest friends in the entire world, Dr. Petra Davlar. And so, you have a really unique, experience, history, and then way of looking at health. And so, I wanted to just kind of highlight your perspective, your thoughts around all things health, and you seem to have a big focus on women's health too, but it's a beautiful way of looking at it. So if you don't care, give us that little introduction to who you are, and let's dive into looking at seasons in relation to health.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Logan. Thank you for having me, and thank you to Dr. Petra for the connection. Gosh, who am I and what do I think? Well, my name is Dr. Marlene Hampton. I grew up in New York City, and so that was my orientation to the world, the concrete jungle. And I was raised on the Lower East Side, which is a very bohemian, or was a very bohemian part of New York City. And so I was raised around a lot of botanical medicine and alternative ways of thinking, if you will. And so I went through life knowing I wanted to be a doctor, but had no idea what naturopathic medicine was. And, I'll cut to the chase here. I went to naturopathic medical school with Dr. Pecha. We were in class together, and both of us were kind of sitting there listening to everything and going, there's gotta be more than this. There's gotta be more than this. And both of us went into our respective practices. Now, I would say that my orientation, my posture towards health really started to evolve and mature when I started farming. And I say that because when you are responsible for taking care of animals and you're up at sunrise year round, right? So your circadian biology automatically sets if you're a farmer. You don't have to do any fancy tricks. There's no devices you need to use. There's no timers that need to go off. Your animals will get you up when you need to get up. My whole world changed, and it wasn't anything that I was forcing, it wasn't any protocol that I was following, and my relationship to what I was doing fell perfectly in sync with everything that I had learned in naturopathic philosophy. So a lot of what Petra and I were taught in school was very protocol-based, standardized green allopathy, if you will. I love Bastyr University. I'm a professor. I teach there. I teach in the philosophy department on how healing works. So of course that's influenced me as well. But being in relationship to nature, and I don't say that in a cliche way, I mean that in a real biological entanglement. There's no way for you to not move more graciously towards health. So that's my whole orientation is everything that I've learned from the animals and the trees and the soil and the sky above and all of it.
That's very unexpected, but I absolutely love it. So this is like a couple different things that come to mind is like one of the major reasons that I homeschool is because I don't want my kids outside of those natural the cycle, right? And
Mhm.
then, I have a farmer's market that's, my day job, quote unquote. But the understanding that, like, I get what you're saying. And
Mhm.
for so many, that can actually be a little more hard to grasp though, right? Like
Mhm.
what that actually means until you're doing that, right? Like we just had a litter of pigs born, and so all four of my kids are there, and they're like poking the placenta. They're like, "Oh, that's so cool. What is this?" And so like you get to experience some different things that are absolutely beautiful. So I love that. Before we get into a little bit, let's lay out the difference between, say, a naturopath and an MD. What are kind of like, obviously not all the details, but just kind of broad overview. What is a difference there?
Wonderful question. Yeah, a standard medical doctor and a naturopathic doctor have similarities in how we are trained when it comes to all of the ologies, right? As a naturopathic doctor, you are trained in anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, all of those things, plus pharmacology, plus minor procedures. I mean, it's really the first 2 years are pretty much inseparable. However, where naturopathic medicine and allopathic medicine differs as far as curriculum goes is the way in which we are oriented to how the body works and how healing happens. And so in naturopathic medicine, we have 6 principles that we follow, the first of which is vis medicatrix naturae, which means the healing power of nature. Now, this is where I think we really, really, really start to differ as far as philosophy goes, because in naturopathic medicine and for naturopathic doctors, our only job Now, not all NDs follow this, so just asterisk there. But our only job is to establish the conditions for health. That's it. So, looking at all of the things that are determining your health and removing any of the obstacles that are in your way to finding cure. The kind of posture and texture that I think that conventional medicine sits better with is I will come and save you, or I will have this heroic approach of controlling these systems in your body to reach a certain outcome instead of I'm going to get everything out of the way that is kind of keeping your body from doing what it was designed to do, which is to heal. You slice your hand as long as you're not rubbing it through all sorts of muck and dirt and nasty things and poking at it constantly, your hand will heal and you probably may not even notice that it ever like once it's closed, it might look like nothing, ever happened. And you didn't do anything about it. You didn't will into it. You didn't, follow any certain protocol, perhaps. You know what I'm saying? So, as long as you are removing the obstacles to cure, the physician's only job in the mind of a naturopathic doctor is to assist nature in healing. And so when we think about this, outside of more acute examples like a cut, what that really means is what are the ways that we can bring you closer to health? What are the factors that are determining your health? Whether it's your diet, whether it's your exercise, whether it's your social life, whether it's so on and so forth, right? There's all of these things that determine your health. But really, once you kind of get everything out of the way that's gumming up the works, if you will, our natural biology will always move towards health so long as the conditions are met.
So it's not, you know, a pill for every ill, right? It's
Mm-mm.
more holistic in the approach. So what then would be the difference between, say, a functional medicine approach, integrative functional, and then naturopathic? What because what as we well, the good and the bad, right, of COVID and questioning everything, right? It seems like a lot of people are waking up to just, well, maybe there's something I don't know or don't understand. And so you see a lot of the functional medicine pop up, integrative, like we don't even really know what that means. More naturopathic doctors are becoming more prominent. So how do we break down those three?
Absolutely. So I would say this is where we're starting to get a little bit more into the nuance. Functional medicine doctors are usually, uh, not always, but usually medical doctors that have additional training in certain um, methodologies like botanical medicine or nutraceuticals and so on and so forth. Where again, I think we really start to differ is in the philosophy. You can't, uh, unless you are trained naturopathically, to have a naturopathic mindset, that philosophy, those principles, those core pillars of healing, the models that we use for healing, our theory, you're going to miss a lot of the nuance and the application of these things. So in naturopathic medicine, we use something called the therapeutic order, which is a it's a triangle, but at the bottom we have all of the what we'd say the foundations of health are. So we need to get your diet in order. We need to get your movement in order. We need to get your light hygiene in order, all the things. And then as you move up to the triangle, you have things like supplementation or nutraceuticals or physical adjustments like chiropractic, osteopathy. And as you move up, then there's pharmaceuticals. And at the tippy top, there's surgery. As a naturopathic doctor, we use all of those things, and one isn't more right than the other. If you get my arm cut off, don't take me to a naturopathic doctor. I want to go straight to the ER and put my arm back on, right? Um, but I would say where functional medicine oftentimes approaches a case is they'll start higher up on that therapeutic order. Oh, your vitamin D is out of sync, or it's at, it's running super low. Let's give you vitamin D supplement. Or, oh, your B vitamins are low. Let's give you a B vitamin supplement. As opposed to, why is your digestion compromised and that you're not extracting the B vitamins from the nutrients you're taking in? Where are you getting your food? What's your relationship to light? All of these things, those foundational approaches, where that's where we often start. And so I'd say that's the main difference is again is the philosophy of how you would approach a case and kind of the journey or the pathway that you would follow to bring about healing in someone. Some would raise B vitamins by giving a supplement. Others would raise B vitamins by correcting any issues that are happening with the gut, digestion, all of that, and then making sure that they're getting nutrient dense food, and then you won't have to supplement at all, right?
Right. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
I think that's a great breakdown. I think that clears up a lot for anybody that has questions, because there are some vast differences there. So you've brought up light a couple times, which tickles me more than I think you could have like at all. Like this is my whole world, and so because I feel like this is the foundation. So like Jack Cruz has made a massive, massive impact on me. I know there's lots of big feelings about Jack, but there's when you have that farming experience, right, and understand seasons and light cycles and growth and harvest and all of these things that happen, hormone changes in animals, like, why do deer breed at a certain time of the year, give birth at a certain, right? Like
Mhm.
all of these things you start seeing, it's easier to connect. And I think that's probably much easier to see through a naturopathic lens than being in an office all the time, at our hospital, right?
Mhm.
What what have you gathered from the Light Peace Foundation to have the philosophy that you kind of work with on this seasonal approach to health?
Mhm. Well, I'm gonna zoom out just a tad, and I'm gonna start with this. We, as humans, as a species on the planet Earth, have evolved under a certain set of conditions for millions and millions and millions of years, right? And as the multicellular, absolutely fascinating organisms that we are, we evolved with a certain set of environmental components that were just the way it was forever, right? Anytime you start to uh, alter the conditions in which we evolved and we adapted to thrive in, when you manipulate or again just alter the environment, you're going to invite in some kind of distunement in health. That's just the way it works. It's that clear. A plus B equals C in this situation, right? So when we start to, I think one of the first and most I'm going to be careful what I say here, but like one of the most insidious ways to bring about ill health in people is to manipulate their relationship to light, and the way that that impacts us biologically, psychologically, as you were saying, hormone, just all of it, right? Here's the thing. You don't have to be a farmer to fall into relationship with light. You just don't. You have to have, unfortunately, a certain set of courage and a certain set of willpower and discipline, if you will, to uh, fall into cadence with the light that is around us. Just as you were saying, you'll notice if you are in direct relationship with the land, you'll see, hormonal changes in the animals, and you'll see certain types of dietary habits change and all of these things. And if we look even just for a moment, even if you're in the city and you look outside at the tree that's outside your window, hopefully, right? You'll start to notice there's something happening here that is falling into, again, this natural cadence. And I should be doing that too, because I am not separate from this system, even if I'm in an apartment building, right, with fluorescent lights over my head, which means that, you know, living by the wheel of the year or some kind of cyclical living situation relates directly to the fact that we are cyclical beings. We are not separate from these cycles and these rhythms, even if, again, we are completely removed from, again, those conditions or those standards for health. That was kind of like a long-winded answer. I hope you were able to stay with me
No,
on that
yeah,
one,
got
but
it, got it.
it's light is such a big part of it, right? But there's also these undercurrents, this, without sounding like totally out there, but these invisible forces that also, I think, bring a certain, healing power and medicine to the times of the year. And that's why our ancestors, we all had these, cross-quarter holidays, major celebrations, major events that marked time. And now we live in a society where there's no honoring or marking of time. There's no delineation between summer and winter. Two completely different seasons, two completely different biological process, two completely different requests of us, right? And if we live our lives in this perpetual summer, you will burn out. I don't know when, but it will happen. Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely love that. That it's the more artificial, the more disconnected from the natural cycles. And you bring up, invisible forces. And for some that may sound like super woo woo, but like when you can look at first, let me go back just a hair. Whether you believe in creation or evolution, like, it really doesn't matter, right? There was a
Mhm.
process at which occurred to be where we are now, right? So, and so many,
Yes.
while I fall on the creation side of this, like, I see how evolution was actually a massive part of the entire process. And so, like, for example, I'm not going too deep in this, but like when you look at our star's life cycle, right? As a star hits a certain point, UV light percentages change, right? This so happens to coincide with a great oxygenation event. And then this is likely where endosymbiosis happened, where mitochondria went into cells, right? Like, so all of these
Yes.
things happen. And to me, I think it lays it out in Genesis, in my opinion, the way I read it. But when you have that, it makes so much more sense that we are dictated by these invisible forces, right? Like, we can't see UV light. So
Mhm.
my point there was that we have electromagnetism. We have seasons and light shifts that we can't always see. We can see some of it, but we can't see all of it. We have different life cycles within plants that we can see very plainly, right? Budding in the spring, leaves produce fruit, harvest, they fall, right? Just leaves
Yes.
change color. Like, all these things we can see, and we don't have to see that whatever force it is that's changing that, we can see something's changing it, right? And, like, to think that we are disconnected from that is so unbelievably egotistically hubris, right? Like, it's just it's insane to me that somehow we feel like we can disregard the natural laws that govern life. So go through your philosophy then on what is spring, summer, fall, winter in the context of humans.
Mhm, mhm. Well, let's start with fall, shall we? Fall is a time of harvest, which means that the way that you were living your life in the spring and the summer, what you were saying yes to, what you were eating, all of the things, you're going to harvest that come fall. Meaning, if you were running around like a chicken with head, you weren't eating well, you were burning yourself out, come harvest time, it's not gonna be a good pull, right? You're going to go into the darker times of the month pretty depleted. Uh, Now, if you were perhaps taking a little bit better care of yourself or falling again more into cadence with the time, fall would be the time where, yes, you have your harvest, but then also the second leg of this is culling the herd, meaning that, and this is where I mean that farming really comes into everything that I work with medicine, which means we got to get rid of anything that is going to hold you back and keep you, from able to. You gotta get rid of everything that is not going to make it through winter, right? So that means that the most gracious and loving thing that you can do is cull the herd, whether that is getting rid of relationships that are going to deplete you, or saying yes to too many things, or following dietary practices that are not going to be in relationship with light, where you are and what time of year it is. If you're eating papaya in the middle of November and you live in Minnesota, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Your body's going to scan that electromagnetic barcode and go beep 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 beep, and not know what to do with this, right? So fall is really a time of reckoning. It's a time of really I take my patients through this practice called the harvest ledger, where I literally have them write down everything that is fruiting for them, everything that gives them nourishment and brings them joy and all these things. And then I have them write down everything that needs to be pruned back. So not they don't need to totally get rid of it, right? But it just needs to they need to dial it back a little bit. And then there's the rot list of things that it's going to rot, and they're not going to be able to put it into storage and carry it through winter, right? So that's fall in a very quick nutshell. Then we come to winter, where it's a time of deep, deep rest. Now, our society is about as far opposite of rest as possible when it comes to the holiday season, right? It's holiday party after holiday party, and so much stress and so much indulgence and eating and all these things, which is, now I don't want to say that that means you shouldn't go to holiday parties or you shouldn't indulge with your family. It's not what I'm saying, but it's the pace in which we are expected to perform in the holiday season in the winter is completely on the opposite end of the spectrum of what is going on around us. All the trees, all the animals are rooting down into some form of hibernation, some type of uh deep resourcing needs to happen, deep, deep, deep rest, so that come spring, we are able to rise, we are able to grow, and everything that we were able to cut back and prune and get rid of in the winter allows the blossoming to happen in the spring and that really, really beautiful fruit to come summer, right? So there's this, I mean, the cheat sheet is just outside your window. You don't even need me to tell you, right? Like, if you just pay attention to what is going on around you, what are the animals doing? Even if you, what's my dog doing, right? Even, again, if you're in an apartment building, just any of these beings that are a little bit more um, harder to persuade perhaps than us, you'll see it. And so I would say this time of year is one of the most important when it comes to really setting up the rest of your year. Fall is absolutely critical because how you treat this season, what you cull from your herd will absolutely dictate how you end up come summer, right? And what you're able to kind of move through the whole year.
Absolutely love that. You talked about coal, and I just got rid of like a dozen roosters, right? Like, so I'm like, I'm not carrying y'all through the winter, like
Yeah.
we don't need this many roosters. You know, and y'all aren't contributing. All right. So that it makes so much sense to me. I love the way you're putting that out. So well, let's man, it just goes to show you how many societal ways we break the natural laws, right? Just the
Mhm.
holiday. Aspect. That's because and especially when you start looking at the breaking of nutrition and dietary things, right? This is the time where we're pounding pies and candy and toffee and brittle, and you think of all the things of, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Yeah, it's a lot of whereas an animal is going to be fasting typically, right? Like this is
Mhm.
more of a ketogenic time and temperate climate. And so the cyclical aspects of that is it's right there in your in your face. The cheat sheet is right out the window if you just look.
Absolutely, and I think and this is I really drive this point home really, really intensely with my patients is you have to know your local farmers no matter where you are because if you're working with a farmer who actually respects the cycles of nature and the health of their animals, you'll learn that milk is a seasonal food. Eggs are also seasonal food. Milk doesn't come in until the babies are born, right? It's not you're not supposed to have milk 24/7, 365. You're not supposed to have an abundance of cream where you can have butter and ice cream and all these things all the time. That's my cow and this is the milk and I have to scrape that cream off the top. There's more of this appreciation and delicacy that comes with food, which is a whole nother rabbit hole to go down, right? But this is exactly as you're saying, wintertime is not the time of eating these beautiful fruits that come from the equator, right? And having these it no, it's the time where we were making bone broth because there was nothing else to eat. The reserves were dwindling, right? And we had to make do with what we had. And these nutrient dense foods were then able to carry us through to spring when the first light returned and then the milk came in, right? And then the eggs started coming back and so on and so forth, right? And this is why, eating animals that have spent their entire spring and summer eating these lush green pastures, that's when you want to harvest. You don't want to eat an animal that was harvested in January. Like it's just it just goes further and further and further depending on how far you wanna go down again that spiral, even though it's really not that I mean, it's really not that spiralic, it's just the way that it is, right? It's everything that you just keep saying, it's natural law.
It is,
Yeah,
right, and,
yeah.
I don't publicly go down this rabbit trail very, very much just because people are gonna think I'm crazier than they already do, but freezers and canning throws off the timing, throws off seasonality, throws off this mismatch of the barcode, right? The electromagnetic barcode that you mentioned earlier. Like, uh, we didn't have that 200 years ago. Like, that
Mhm,
then that's in the history of, everything, that's not very long ago, right? That's a massive,
mm.
massive changes that we've had in a very short amount of time, and so happens to coincide with the worst health, I guess, ever, in the history of man. So, well, let's go into spring. What does spring and then summer look like? How is your philosophy around those and health, laid out?
Beautiful. Well, I think that spring is actually one of the most so it's a tight contest between winter and spring being the most misunderstood seasons. Spring people get so excited. They're like, "There's the sun, let's do this." And there's this, rushing aspect to spring that I am constantly, warning or trying to guide people back to still slowing down a little bit. This is when we're just waking up. It's kind of like, if you took your seedlings that you had been, growing and then you put them outside, it's first day of spring, they're going to freeze and they're not going to, that's it. It's over, right? So you have to go slow. You have to thaw as the soil is thawing, which means that you're just starting to ramp up and you're just starting to, move your lymph and move these digestive and de- de- detoxification processes. You're waking up your liver, you're waking up your gallbladder, you're looking around and saying, "Oh, look at the weeds popping up. Oh, there's dandelion. What's dandelion good for? Oh, it's good for moving lymph, it's good for moving bile, it's getting all of the kind of sluggishness of winter as it should have been," right? Kind of you're slowly waking things up. And so there's this burnout aspect that I see a lot in folks that they're like, "It's spring, I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm out, I'm out of winter. Here we go, here we go, we go." And then by summer, again, there's this depletion. So if we just follow the incredible guide that was created for us, right? We can see the exact instruction manual on how to be a human on the earth, right? So spring is a time of rejuvenation. It's a time of thawing, if you will, not running, not burning through everything. And then come summer, it's a party. If you've been kind of following into cadence with us with all of the seasons, summertime is a time of and eating succulent fruits and like here's an example. I have type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed when I was 9 years old. And that was a blessing in many ways, but one of which was I, being someone that wears a continuous glucose monitor, always know what my blood sugar is. So I see this, the huge trend now, everybody's wearing these devices. I'm like, I've been doing that for decades now, right? But here's the thing. If I were to eat mango in the wintertime, my blood sugar would go insane. I would spike. I would have to take so much insulin. It would stay high. It was a roller coaster disaster. I'm not signing up for it. If I eat mango in the summertime and I'm outside at a picnic or I'm at the beach with my family under that beautiful light and there's enough UVB light coming down that I can break down those carbohydrates, we can get into the deep science there, but again, rabbit hole. My blood sugar, yeah, I have to take insulin, right? Mango is a very high glycemic food, but the way that it moves with my body is so different. And that comes down to light. That comes down to the amount of UVB light. Again, that electromagnetic barcode. I'm in San Diego, California, so I'm a little bit closer to the equator than maybe some other places, right? But I'm able to tolerate those foods. I'm not doing anything differently, right? Other than I'm not eating that mango inside in a sweater with the heat on under no light, right? I'm outside, I'm moving my body, I'm in the sunshine. And there's biological processes to support all of this and all the research is there and all the evidence is there, but there's also, again, just the divine, creation of how just the way that things were. The thing about seasonal eating and the wheel of the year is if you think about what foods come or are best harvested at certain times of year, it directly correlates with light. Even if we think about the ways that our moons are named, right? In June, it's called the strawberry moon. Well, why is that? I used to think, oh, must have been some really beautiful, poetic reasoning. No, it's called the strawberry moon because that's when you went and picked the strawberries, right? And that's when the strawberries are most succulent and abundant. And that's also when your body can tolerate that kind of glucose, right? I got really off track there, I apologize, but that's spring and summer for you.
Yeah, no, I love it. That's that okay, so I didn't know about the type 1 diabetes, and so now I've, like, so many different directions that I wanna, like, go down with you. Um, the fact that we have a, hyperglycemia, like, crisis within society, right? Insulin resistance, the on and on that is correlated with the lifestyles, right? Like food is a big part of it, but lifestyle is so important because you just laid it out, right? Same food, different time, different environment, different effect, right? So go into that
Mhm.
a little bit on like what is this basic understanding that we should have in regards to managing blood sugar that is because I get really frustrated when I see the ADA come out with some guidelines because it's a bunch of nonsense, right? So,
Don't get me
what
started. Yeah.
what do you think on that topic specifically?
Yeah, so I just wanna make sure I understand your question. You're asking, what are ask me again.
The effect of the environment on blood sugar in regards
Gotcha.
to the approach of Ozempic, insulin, metformin, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. I think that it is yeah, I'll say this, I think it's the most important aspect of it, honestly, and I'll tell you why. Your relationship to what and it's just, it's pure naturopathic thinking here. Unless you have a pretty, gosh, there's so many ways I wanna go with that. I have, like, 10 thoughts all coming out at the same time. I'm very passionate about this topic. Your relationship to light, your relationship to movement, your relationship to your environment around you, meaning the humans that you share your life with. All of these factors are incredibly important when it comes to blood sugar. So, here's an example. Relationship. Again, being someone that has worn a continuous glucose monitor for way longer than any of these other people wearing them, right? I could see how my blood sugars would change when I was in relationships that were not good for me, when I was in really high stress environments, like when I was in medical school, or when I was working in the clinic under fluorescent lights with no windows, right? I could see how, wow, okay, I have to increase my basal rate, the amount of insulin that I get every hour, right? Or, what would be different if I ate my food outside, instead of eating it in the cafeteria, so on and so forth. And so being in, sort of like a running constant experiment, I didn't need to see any research paper. I was like, I am the research paper. I can see what's going on here, right? And how that even impacts, I mean, even in incredibly acute situations, I think about the birth of my first child. I ended up with a C-section, an emergency C-section under general anesthesia, and my blood sugars were going absolutely insane. My other 2 children I've had at home, and my blood sugars were completely fine. There was no issues with hypoglycemia after birth, nothing. It was like, I was, not even diabetic, right? So there's all of these, beautiful examples of my lived experience that have informed how I approach this with patients. Because blood sugar regulation, whether you have any kind of diabetic predisposition or not, is incredibly important, right? And again, environment, the choices that we're making, falling into cadence with what is being asked of us is the most important factor. You can eat, you can eat whatever. There's this, eh, just slightly dipping into the ADA, right? There's this idea that carbohydrates equals the amount of insulin that you take, right? So if I eat 5 grams of carbohydrates, I need to take 1 unit of insulin. Any person that has diabetes, particularly a type 1 diabetic, because we tend to be a little bit more neurotic and on it, just say, not just as a blanket statement, but we have to be, right? It's truly a life or death situation. Will tell you that's complete bullshit. It's not 1 unit of insulin per 5 carb, whatever your insulin to carbohydrate ratio is. If I eat something that is pure fat, or I eat something that is pure protein, there still has to be a relationship with insulin there. There still has to be some, aspect of me moving my body somewhat and so forth, right? We call this, or my endocrinologist likes calls it invisible carbs, right? And it just shows us that the foods that we're eating, the choices that we're making, how we're digesting those foods are just as, if not more important than just this carbohydrate ratio, which the point that I'm trying to make here is what you're eating and when you're eating it and how you're eating it is vastly more important than any kind of algorithm telling you, this will give you the perfect blood sugar, right?
Which is a pretty good little way of cautioning the algorithmic medicine that's coming down the pipe, right? Like it's gonna be disastrous.
Yes.
It really is. So,
Yes.
one thing that we've not really hit on that I think is unbelievably important, temperature, right? So
Mm.
we look at things like cold therapy becoming much more popular. The differences between having a 72-degree home 12 months out of the year versus experiencing heat, experiencing cold, right? So, what are your thoughts around temperature?
The absolute same as everything else, right? It's like there are a reason for these things. And that's not to say that you should go through your entire winter season with your teeth chattering, seeing your breath in your home. But to have it be 80 degrees where you walk around in shorts and it's February, unless you're in Costa Rica, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because again, your brain is going to, you know, even if you're stepping outside for 1 second and you got sunglasses on, you know you're still, as long as you're not completely covered, your body is still receiving information about where you are in time and space. And anytime there's a mismatch in nature, whether it's with light, whether it's with temperature, whether it's with food, your mitochondria, your body, every part of your being is going to go, it's the alarm's going to go off. Wait a second. I'm registering that you're here, but you're eating food from there, and the temperature in here is this. Where are you? And what am I supposed to be doing right now? Right? It's entirely disorienting to every single cell in our body. So, not to say that you need to be extremely uncomfortable, that you should, get rid of your central air and all of these things, but to keep the thermostat a lot lower or enjoy the cold, right? In my household, we live in a log cabin, so we have really good insulation. So in the summertime, we barely need to turn on the air. There's a couple days of the year where it's like, all right, it's really hot, right? But in same goes for the winter. If you have these relationships where you're going outside, you're also going to be adapted. Now, your ability to tolerate temperature is also a direct reflection of your metabolism. And I don't mean metabolism in the sense necessarily of like fat burning and like all of that, right? I'm talking about your metabolic health, the energy that your body is able to generate, the way that your body's able to dictate and fall into relationship with these cellular processes. If you have an intact, good, strong metabolism, your metabolic health is strong enough, you will not have hot or cold sensitivities to the degree where it would be excruciating for you to, dip yourself in a cold plunge or so on and so forth. And the other thing that I'd say about that is that I think that there is also um, a mismatch in nature with sometimes how we utilize these practices like sauna or cold plunge or these things, and that the best time of year to sauna is actually the summer. And so people hear that and you're like, wait a second, what? I'm burning hot and you want me to get in a burning hot thing? Or I'm freezing my ass off and you want me to jump in a cold plunge? Have you gone? Where's your mind, doc? Right? But there's a mismatch, right? If it's burning hot outside and we dunk ourselves in an ice bath, the body's going to go, "Wait a second. I was running all these processes because we're burning hot right now and now I'm freezing cold." It's a shock to the system, which has its benefits, right? I'm not saying it's you should never, but there has to be this understanding of what is the most natural state for my body to be in right now and then kind of use that as a determining factor for all the choices that we make in life.
Yeah. So the seasonality of the extremes is really interesting that you've said that because two ways that I can correlate to Arkansas, right? I'm in central Arkansas. In the north of me, we've got the Ozark Mountains and lots of creeks and rivers, right? Very cold. And so
Mhm.
they're not 32 degrees cold or like some of these extremes that I see some of the cold plunging, but they're 50s. And so getting in there would be essentially it would be natural, right? And then just south of
Mhm.
us, we have hot springs. It's hot springs because
Mhm.
it literally has hot springs like you could participate in at any point. And so that's really interesting that it also can tie back into geography, seasonality, and what you're
Absolutely.
exposed to as well. So like, and then there's times in the summer where you really kind of don't have water because you might be in a drought, right? You might not be even have the opportunity to get in the creek or the river. So I think that's a really interesting way of framing it as well. Uh, so yeah, thank you for that. Well, what let's go let's go back just a little bit then. Somebody new to you, new to naturopathic medicine, anything, they come in, they're type 2 diabetes, overweight, have got hypothyroid, the kind of your textbook, this is what an American is right now.
Mhm. Sure.
Where do you start?
Mm. And here's the thing that they teach us in naturopathic medical school, and I try to teach my students. In a naturopathic office, when someone walks in, and let's say that you have 10 folks walk in and they all have the same cold, right? They have a head cold. I would bet a fat stack of cash that if they came into my office, each 10 of those people that are walking in with a head cold are going to walk out with a completely different treatment plan. They'd say, well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Because we're so used to this standardized medicine. So if I had someone walk into my office, and this might not be the answer that, your listeners wanna hear. If someone walks in my office and they're standard American metabolic disease, right? They've got diabetes, they've got hyperlipidemia, all of the things. I need to start with whatever that biggest obstacle to cure for them is. So it might be their job. It might not even touch their diet to begin with. It might be their diet. It might be their relationship to light. It might be who knows, right? So it really, I mean, to bring about actual healing, to do my job, which is to establish the conditions for health, that's going to be different for everybody. So 10 people that all have the same diagnosis, how they ended up there is probably very different, right? I have lots of people say, "Oh, you have diabetes. Would you eat too much sugar as a kid?" Absolutely not, right? What I think happened, being that there's no autoimmune history in my family, is that I grew up really stressed in a super toxic environment of New York City. I love New York City, but it's not the best place as far as like getting healthy or being healthy or all the things, right? And my body reacted to the environment in which I was in. And that's how there's, again, a whole other like theories and ideologies that I have around that. But you have to be working with a practitioner that is really treating the whole person. And I don't just mean all of your systems. I don't mean, oh yeah, they're helping you with blood sugar and they're helping you with weight and they're helping you with no. I mean, they're the whole person, the environment in which you're in, the relationships that you're in, how you're living your life, how you're structuring your day. My intakes with patients are at minimum 2 to 3 hours long. Very different than a 15-minute model, because how am I supposed to know all this about my patients in 15 minutes, right? And you it at times can feel intense, but unless you're really turning over every stone and you're truly imagining that you're Sherlock Holmes, you're going to miss it. And you're going to miss that piece that is so pivotal in that person's life, that you're not just handing them a protocol that, yeah, maybe they'll follow for 2 weeks and then they'll see some good results and then they'll just kind of end up back where they were. They need a reckoning, these people, right? These patients that are so desperate for help, but a diet isn't always going to fix them, right? Or even just their relationship to light. There has to be this multifactorial um, vision that you have with your patients of, if you wanna be healthy and you're in it this deep, we gotta change a whole lot of things, and we gotta really start where, we have this saying in naturopathic medicine, you have to meet your patient where they're at. And a lot of times my students think that that means that you kinda have to, how do I wanna put this? You have to take it really slow and you have to kind of be gentle with them, and you kind of have to like do what makes them happy, and then eventually you can kind of like slip in some other things there. And I don't think that that's the right interpretation. I think it's, you really have to listen to who's in front of you and see what is actually going on with them and then start there. And it might not be what they want to hear. Or I'll share a really brief example of this. I had a patient come and see me once, and her chief concern was acne, and we're doing her intake, and she says, "Oh, I'm an esthetician. I have really bad acne. I have to clear this up because my clients are coming to see me, and they're getting facials from me. I've got a pizza face, right? Okay, tell me about, this, that, and the other thing." Come to find out that she has a toxic relationship with alcohol and prescription pills. She's a smoker. She has ulcerative colitis. She's in an extremely abusive relationship. She has a whole bunch of unhealed trauma, so on and so forth. Now, if I would have told her to put vitamin C on her skin because it's really, it's great, it brightens your skin, I wouldn't have helped her at all, right? There's so many, and I mean, it took years to get rid of that acne, right? But it's gone now, and it's gone for good, and it's been gone for years. So it just depends on how deep your patients are willing to go. Not everybody's right to work with me, right? There's a this level discernment that you have to have as a physician as well. But that would be my answer, right? There's
Beautiful.
nothing, it's not a one size fits all ever. Even if you have the same philosophy with each person, the way that you're going to start is going to be completely different.
Absolutely beautiful. All right. Well, you hit a word in there that kind of triggers people sometimes, and I think it means a lot of different things to different people. So, give
Mm.
us, give me your introduction to what it means by trauma and
Mm.
what that affects within, you know, all of us.
Mhm. Well, Logan, I might say some controversial things here.
I love
You
it.
can kick me off if you want.
Now,
I won't take it too personally. All right, here we go. Trauma. It matters. It really does. Trauma is definitely in the eye of the beholder. However, I'll say it's an and instead of a but situation, right? And we have to keep perspective in what trauma actually is and how it manifests in the body and what we allow it to do in the body. Now, that's not to say that, um, you can have a really traumatic situation happen to you and it's your fault and how you let it happen, how it manifests in your body. It's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is we have moved into a spectrum of society. Now it's swinging back now, right, as these things tend to go. But there was a time where when I was lecturing with my students, the university was asking me to give trigger warnings and disclaimers for l literally everything, right? And I said to my supervisor, "I appreciate your concern, but are you telling me that these future physicians are gonna be with their patients, and if their patients has to talk to them about something serious, they're gonna say, 'Oh, well, you didn't give me a trigger warning, so, I'm sorry, I can't work with you anymore.'" You get what I'm saying? So I think that there is, when we look back at our history, even 2 generations, 3 generations back, the way that trauma was, manifested in the body, I think has a lot to do with the environment in which we find ourselves and the support in which we find ourselves. And I don't necessarily mean like social services support, like therapy, right? So my husband is a history buff and is in the military and all these things. And he always talks about, I swear he's got many past lives, right? Everywhere from fighting in the Battle of Culloden. My husband can't hear bagpipes without crying. So I want to talk about trauma, right? But if we think about our grandparents or our great grandparents, depending on how old you are in World War II. You want to talk about trauma. You want to talk about what was happening in World War One, World War II, Vietnam, any of these things. And then if I would have asked my grandfather or my great grandfather, like, how does trauma manifest in your body? They'd been like, Marlene, what are you talking about? Right? And that's not to say that they were perfect, but I think a lot of it has to do with this happened to me and I'm still whole and I'm still complete. And this victim mentality, I think, is one of the most pervasive and insidious and manufactured things to really strip us of our health and our bearings in society. So that's the PC version of what I'll say on trauma.
No, I love that. One of the greatest books that I've ever read that kind of packages this in a different perspective is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I think that that is such a
Mm,
beautiful book to read and just kind of see through his eyes as he went through all of that. So I I do I don't know that I could disagree with you in the slightest. I really do. I think that one of my very favorite quotes is Napoleon Hill, and it's with every adversity comes a seed of a greater or equal or greater opportunity, right? And so, like for
mhm,
me, on one hand, I'm not over being told my 5-year old has stage 4 cancer, right? Like it still affects me to this day. I just attempt to utilize it in a way that helps. Lander's now 11, so we're almost 6 years out of this, and so like trying to package it and use it, I think is also a framework that people need to just hear, right? Like everybody has to deal with everything their own way, and it doesn't mean one thing is greater or lesser. It's not about that either. Um, no, I love that you do that. I love that you said, yeah, it's a legitimate thing, and just how we perceive and go about it is matters even more so.
mhm. Like everything in life, no? It's like we get dealt a certain hand of cards or things happen to us, and there's folks that, lean on the term or the phrase, like, everything happens for a reason, and I think that some people, that really bothers them, hearing that, and I'm not saying that I even identify with that ideology that everything happens for a reason. I think that there some shit just happens sometimes. But again, it's just as you're saying, it's how you move forward. It's what medicine doesn't always taste good, right? It doesn't. but it's what we can use or what we can use it for, what we can do with it, right? I mean, what you have been able to accomplish, the direction of your life. I mean, not that I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but Logan, I imagine that it changed everything for you and your family.
We wouldn't be here talking right now.
Exactly, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I just and that's why I lean back on, that Napoleon Hill quote is always trying to and that's the whole reason that it's called sowing prosperity. It's a combination of that
Mhm.
Napoleon Hill quote and Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived, God is not mocked, whatever man sows, this he shall also reap, right? And so tie in that whole farming analogy with it as well. It's a lattice work of mental models, and just I think that
Mhm.
we're here to be servants, and I think that we got to do the best we can to take care of ourselves and our families, and then a community, and it ripples out, right? And so,
Mhm.
um, everybody has to go about that different, but I I love it. This has been one of my favorite conversations I've had in a while. So, where does somebody find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, your classes, work with you directly, all that good stuff? How are you found?
Yeah, so you can find me from my website, which is mymedicine.life. That's it. You can also find me at Instagram dot or at Dr. Hampton. It's a little harder to spell. But I run seasonal courses. It's kind of the cadence that I set with the work that I do and it's good for me as well, right? I take it alongside with everybody else, but I'm running a seasonal medicine program right now for fall. And they can learn more about that by going to my website. Same I'll do for winter, spring, summer. And I would say that is my most beloved offering that I open up and kind of serve the community with is let's get you in cadence with these seasons, right?
Love it. I love it. Thank you. So grateful that Petra connected us and excited to just keep the conversations going.
Yes, Logan, thank you so much for having me.